There is a statement about Mahatma Gandhi that is kind of telling. Gandhi, of course, was always famously seen wearing almost no clothes. He was a guy who would present himself as in extreme poverty. But of course, he was supported by the Indian mill owners who were kind of bankrolling, if you will, his political campaigns. And at one point, one of the senior mill owners was asked, they said, wow, man, this Gandhi, I mean, was so impressive, his poverty. And the mill owner goes, well, you have no idea how much money it cost to keep that man in poverty. In other words, the mill owners, this was a staged operation for political purposes. And I mention all this because I was just reading the backstory on AOC and her famous dress, Tax the Rich, that she wore to the Met Gala. Now, I stumbled across an article that actually appears in a PR newsletter. It's called PR News Online. And they're boasting about all the PR companies that orchestrated this. So this was not something where she got an idea or her working class friend decided to design the dress. No, this was planned. Apparently, there's a company called Berlin Rosen, which was behind this. And I'm now reading just from the press release. As many PR practitioners know, utilizing a public platform to deliver a message doesn't happen overnight. So they've been planning this. They say, in this case, Berlin Rosen worked with the designer, creative director Aurora James, as well as with Ocasio-Cortez's PR team. So you've got the outside PR team, the inside PR team, the designer and her team, all working to do this. And they say, quote, this included prepping materials that highlighted talking points for the Congresswoman and James. So they were fed, talk about this. This is the statement you need to say. As well as offering select reporters nuggets of info without giving everything away. This woman who's representing one of these PR agencies says, quote, the whole point was to make it a surprise. In other words, it wasn't a surprise, but we have to make it a surprise. And teeing up the right reporters. In other words, we've got some suckers who are on the left, they're on our side. All we need to do is get them all excited so that they had the context behind the look. So in other words, pretend like this is about some grand cause, whereas it's not about that at all. So then the question becomes, and of course, it's very easy to say hypocrisy, but what is this really about? What are these people, AOC and this designer, Aurora James, after? Well, I want to suggest that what it's about is this is ultimately about careerism. This is about figuring out a way to play cultural politics in a way that gets a lot of fame and a lot of money into your pocket. Let's check this theory out by looking at the designer, Aurora James. Now, Aurora James is a buddy of AOC. According to AOC, she's a working class gal. She's basically kind of been struggling. She believes, as AOC does, in social justice. Now, first of all, if the woman is struggling, it's a little interesting to notice that just recently, in fact, September of 2020, so a year ago, she bought a $1.6 million residence in a tony Los Angeles suburb called Hollywood Hills. So this is not somebody who's particularly indigent. Second, although AOC got a free ticket to the Met, she's a Congresswoman, the other woman, Aurora James, did not. Now, how did she get there? How did she pay the $35,000 ticket to come? Well, answer, she's dating a billionaire. She's dating a guy named Benjamin Bronfman. Bronfman is the son of the Bronfman fortune. This is a distillery fortune. They make whiskey and all kinds of stuff. The boyfriend is worth an estimated $100 million. So this is the rich and famous posing as working class, even as they leverage their connections to try to get more media exposure and obviously greater amounts of money. Now, interestingly, this Aurora James, according to the New York Post, they did a little bit of an investigative job on her. Our side rarely does these. I'm glad we're doing it. Anyway, turns out she's a notorious tax deadbeat. She owes over $100,000 to the IRS. Her parent company does. She's also a rent deadbeat, which means that there have been eviction efforts to throw her company out of their premises, and a previous landlord also sued her for unpaid rent. The New York Post interviewed some people who work for this woman, Aurora James, and they say that she basically runs a sweatshop. What she does is she wants to hire people and not pay them, essentially modern-day slaves. So she calls them interns. So the idea is to call them interns, don't pay them, make them work long hours, and keep all the money for yourself. So this woman's got an incredible racket going. And of course, I'm not surprised that she and AOC are pals. AOC's got an even bigger racket going herself. So what you have is that AOC says when she's put before the cameras that the reason she's doing this is she wants to send a powerful message. But the real message for people who are willing to read between the lines is here are two very cunning, ambitious careerists who have come not to do good for society, but to do very well for themselves.